Welcome to Go Sports Live. I'm Matty Marshall, and man, we had a crazy one at the last event. It's a bit of a precedent-setting event. We haven't had one. Well, we did have one in Galveston years ago, but this is a different era in paintball. So we are going to be playing the finals, the Sunday paintball that we all know and love. That's going to be going down June 20th, and it's going to be going down in Atlantic City, and we're going to be doing it for the Lone Star Major. We're going to be discussing a lot of things coming up here on Go Sports as we head into that event. But got Todd Martinez here, one of my favorite co-hosts, and he's the coach of Chicago Aftershock, and they made Sunday. And so we got a decent amount to discuss. We, like I said, we're going to be breaking down the intricacies of these matchups that we're going to be seeing on Sunday. Which, well, it's not Sunday, it's Thursday. So this is where, again, it's been since 2012 we've had anything like this before. So we do have a decent amount to talk about. Todd, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, Matty. I can't say I'm not upset that we didn't get to play in that muddy bog, all that water. I love paintball. I love being out there if it's already coming down. But, man, that was one crazy night, just listening to that thunder all night, hearing that rain come down. I was like, and when it's time to wake up, it's going to be a mess out there. So I'm glad we postponed it.
I mean, I get it. But I'm going to just to push back a little bit. Maybe we could start off with this conversation. I feel like paintball kind of missed an opportunity a little bit. I mean, if I was in your situation or if I was playing, and now I'm saying this, having played a lot of muddy tournaments. I mean, I've played in some mud, we've been through the wars and in these different situations I played in snow. I played in rain. I played in mud. I played in tornado warnings. I played in all that. But now that we're kind of sitting here and we're asking the world, hey, care about professional paintball? You want to see a crazy battle? I feel like we may have missed a little bit of an opportunity, just in the sense that, and there was some pushback from the fans, because we didn't have, the pro event. Now, also as the pro event's going down, and that's obviously it's the best paintball players and teams in the world. So here at Go Sports, we did the divisionals on Sunday. Love telling paintball stories, but what we're trying to do is take the tip of the spear and tell those people's stories and show their battles. And that last part of it, the showing the battle part of it, it's like some of the most historic games and tournaments that have ever been played have been played in some sort of inclement weather. I mean, Heroes for a Day, the famous Patrick Sporer documentary. I mean, one of the games we played, against Infamous in Pomona was insane. We played a nasty cheating slugfest in a pouring rain, mud bog, at night. But still, it was such a crazy battle, and it was such a close battle, and it was there, and it was filmed, and the story was told, and then that became a legend, and legends never die. And so I just feel that because we had a situation where it's like, if you went and won that mud bog tournament, because we didn't have a lot of rain in the afternoon, we definitely could have played the pro games out there or the semi-pro games. But I understand there's, again, there's a big tournament happening, and based on the fact we had a big delay, we got to get all these other teams in. I'm just saying, hypothetically, if we could have had the pro games out there or the semi-pro games and saw that battle, and whoever ends up winning that, you become a hero forever. And then the videos and the story of that, because I mean, think about it. You coach Chicago Aftershock. It's one of the best stories that exists right now in pro paintball. What a cool story. If you guys show up after your performance at the first event and find a way to win that tournament in the mud, and Dylan, catches that and makes an amazing documentary out of that, and then that gets out there, you'll have people coming up to you 15 years from now saying like, oh my God, dude, that battle you guys won in the mud in Texas was legendary. What do you think? Just based on the story alone, bro. You know where I'm going with this, dude.
No, I'm with you. And again, we played so many tournaments in the mud, so many tournaments in the rain. But out there in Dallas, like that day, as much water as was on that field, it felt like a Pomona, and people definitely still talk about Pomona for the amount of rain and mud it was. I mean, like almost knee deep, right? And like just seeing the morning videos and the pictures and stuff, and it was just like, man, when it's that deep, when you're literally diving into a pool of water, that is 6-8 inches deep. It's tough. Guns get messed up, paint gets messed up.
Totally.
I guess I'm just kind of a paintball purist. I like to play when everybody's at their best, and yeah, it is part of the game. It is part of the game that we've played for so many years. It's harder to think of a paintball tournament where it didn't rain than one that it did, right? So it's like, everybody prepares for it. Everybody shows up with their rain gear, their visors, barrel covers and whatnot. But, for one day, I was glad that we didn't do it. I want to go out there and I don't mind finishing that event at the next event. And, I'm cool with it. I saw Rainey at the airport on the way home. And he's like, I wanted to play, and it's so bad. And I'm like, I know, because you're crazy.
Well, and that's kind of one of those situations. I'll tell you what, if I was a black, so we look at, because again, we're going to be doing bunch of different shows on the lead up to this next event, talking about the battle, because we do now have a very rare situation. We have the first time in, since 2012, where we can discuss these battles that are gonna go down on Thursday. Emulate, essentially the Sunday battle we would normally see that we would have saw in Texas. And I'm going to laugh though, if the paintball gods curse us with more rain and it turns into a mud bog in Atlantic City, because that is definitely possible. The East Coast it's a green for a reason out there. So that is definitely a possibility in the books here, especially as we always discuss that setting up a paintball tournament is kind of like doing a Hopi rain dance. But it just, if I was one of the teams that had, if I was, a Blast Camp or an ML Kings, a team that likes to slug it out, and I would have loved to play against whoever matched up against us in that mud bog. And I just think that it would have been a situation where the lower ranked teams had a higher percentage of a chance to win. Now, you could also argue it the other way. You could say, like, yeah, sure, a Damage or a Shock or these other guys that have, been in the league for years, and like they can get nasty too, when things get crazy. So does it really give these other teams an advantage? I don't know. But I really would have liked to see that played out. I think it would have really been a cool story, but that's not what's happening. What's happening is that we're going to play this out the 20th of June. It's going to be going down, but we do have now a month and a half essentially to kind of break these matchups down. So that's, again, we're going to have more shows coming at you and more content breaking into these rivalries. But, Todd, I didn't think there was going to be a better person I could touch base with to discuss the intricacies of these battles. And so that's what I kind of wanted to focus on. And then also, at least for the, this show right now, before we head into some more complicated stuff. And of course, you can come on, to discuss that in the weeks leading up. But it is, again, so now we have a situation where, okay, we know who's playing who. We know the layout that's being played on, because I talked to Jason Trozen, and he said that there was a decent chance there was going to be a blind layout for Atlantic City, which creates a very interesting story for that event. And then we're going to be playing the Texas layout. So these were, I would have to look at my discussion with them, but it was basically like 99% that this is the way it's going down. So we're having a Texas layout for the Thursday event to figure out who's going to win the actual Texas event. And then we're going to have a blind layout, which is going to be walkable around 4 p.m. on Thursday, because we're trying to play the finals around 1:30 on Thursday. Wild card starts at 8 a.m. This is all Eastern time. So it's going to be kind of interesting, because now you have a situation where, so Revo gets to prepare for Diesel for a month and a half, and they get to watch every single game that those guys played on that layout and figure out what they're going to do. Same thing with ML Kings and Blast Camp. Now, Legion, it waits the winner of ML Kings and Blast Camp. Ironman await the winner of Revo and Diesel, and then Heat's going to play X Factor and Shock's going to play Damage. So you have this situation, which we haven't had in 12 years, where you have over a month to prepare for your opponents to determine who moves on in the tournament. After that, you should probably also be doing some homework on the teams in your side of the bracket, because if, depending if it's Revo or Diesel, if you're Ironman, you got to scout both those squads. And then same on the other side. And then if for you guys, Shock and Damage, you got to either play Legion, and we're going to get into the weeds on this a little bit here in this conversation as to who looked good at the last event and crunch some numbers. But I just kind of wanted to, just as we look at the bracket here, but I just want to throw it out for what you think about it, in the sense that, wow, you, for the first time, not ever, but for the first time in 12 years, you have this situation where you can put that layout, you can just grind the hell out of this layout. You can, watch all the tape that possibly have, every angle from Go Sports, anyone you could figure out that filmed those games, watch how they're feeling in the pits, there's so much homework that could be done in this situation. So my question to you is, one, what's your methodology for Shock? And then two, how much homework do you think people should be doing?
Oh, I mean, there's no reason, exactly like you said, to just not grind as much as you possibly can. Watch the other team's games multiple times. Go back and take notes, discuss those notes with your teammates. If you can get on the field together and practice. Go back over your own games, what worked for you, what didn't work for you. And, there's no excuse to not be as prepared as you possibly can. We actually made an entire European pro team just so that we could go get more spins on the layout in Portugal next weekend. We had planned that ahead of time. Todd Adamson, he's a real forward thinker. He was like,
100%.
Back in January, he was like, I'm going to buy a European pro team just in case I buy another pro team. And then at the second event, it gets rained out. And then we got to go to Europe and practice on the same layout. So that way we can practice for the layout at the event after that. Aftershock,
What a genius. Absolute genius.
That's the way Todd Adamson does it around here.
Yeah, no surprise. Todd Adamson, just absolutely, the foresight on that man, impressive. Yeah, so you guys are going to go over there. Maybe let's talk about this, because paintball is an international thing, and you guys and what Todd Adamson and you and all the brain trust behind the Aftershock brand is kind of coming out with a lot of stuff. They have a European team. They have obviously the team they're building, and you guys did really good at this second event, which we're going to discuss in a bit. But just kind of break that down a little bit. What's the vision from Todd Adamson according to what he's told you? What does he want to accomplish with the bringing back the Chicago Aftershock? Again, one of the most legendary teams ever, multiple-time world champions, and one of the most iconic teams in the game.
Well, I think the biggest thing for Todd, again, he had bought the European franchise before the U.S. franchise had become available, and his whole goal there was to, get a team to go and win in Europe, to try and come and win, that spot, at World Cup for the European team, and then, try and get back into the NXL. And then, the pro team spot ended up becoming available. So we actually have two really nice balanced teams. I think everybody's really happy with the way everything's turned out, because, Shock Europe has 6 guys from Columbus level, right? We're able to keep that core together. They still get to practice a lot. And then we have a couple guys from the Raiders, Steven Mazurk, Ken Nunez, and 2 new guys that are just up and coming talent in Alex Barker and Ben Slofer. So, we're really excited about the team that we have going in Europe, some continuity there, and then obviously the team here. But, Todd just, he lives and breathes Aftershock. He's been around the sport with Tammy and the Femme Fatales, for some years now, trying to help the, WNXL grow and trying to help get more, women playing paintball. But, when the opportunity came up for him to have Aftershock come back, he was just chomping at the bit to do that. So, Todd wants to do big things in paintball, not just have the team and, run a team, but, Todd's been playing this sport of paintball since, I think it was, the late 80s or the very early 90s, right? So, he's seen so many things happen over the years. Great businessman, wants to contribute to helping grow the sport. Like everybody says, they want to do their part, help grow paintball, bring outside sponsors to paintball, and really just, show paintball to the world. Todd loves this game, just like you and I, the sport's been great to us. So, we just try and do things to, within our control to try and help, where we can and, show paintball to the world.
So let's talk about this breakdown, or let's break down this, the bracket that we're seeing right here. Let's talk about this wild card match. the 2 wildcard matches. You got Revo taking on Diesel, and you got ML Kings taking on Blast Camp. And again, we're going to be discussing these matchups here in the weeks leading up to this event. But this is just a very interesting story, because if you kind of look at how this all broke down, I mean, you have a situation where, you know, a giant bulk, when you look at the brackets, I mean, Ironman, Aftershock, Damage all made it through. They were sitting at tier 3. And then you have ML Kings, Diesel, Blast Camp making it through. They're sitting at tier 4, and this just shows you how difficult the league is in general to win, which is incredibly impressive for all of these teams. Now, again, there's 20 pro teams, 200 pro players ish, right around that mark. And the fact that you have, you know, I mean, 3 of the tier 4 teams made it, and 3 of the tier 5 teams made it into Sunday is incredibly impressive. It's going to make the series title run fascinating, because, you know, Dynasty didn't make Sunday, Hurricanes no Sunday, Legion looks amazing, Aftermath didn't make Sunday, Impact didn't make Sunday, and these are records that we're breaking. Impact made every Sunday for, I think, 12 years. It's been since 2017, I believe, since San Diego Dynasty hasn't played on Sunday. Like, we're talking about, there's kids that are you know, about to go into middle school before the last time we saw Impact not play on Sunday. And then, you know, people learning arithmetic in elementary school, and before Dynasty had a one-off, because this is just how hard pro paintball is, and didn't make Sunday, you know. So it's insane where we're at right now with this sport, with you know, all these more events to go. So yeah, we're going to watch this all go down on Thursday, but I just, you know, we're used to hyping things up and discussing what's going to go down for an entire 3-day event. Now we get a 4-day event with like 2 wins that are going to happen in the same weekend. But let's break down these wildcard games real quick, at least from what you think. Like I said, we're going to be bringing you guys input from Revo and Diesel and Blast Camp and ML Kings as we move into these battles, and the other teams that made it into the quarters already. But Todd, of course, you know, as a wise sage in this sport, got to get your input on this. Revo Diesel, what do you think about this matchup?
So we talk about going back and doing our homework, right? And you and I actually called these games in the morning session, the Revo and Diesel games. And we saw Revo seem like they played pretty solid at the beginning of the event, right? But then they ran into Damage later in the prelims. And Damage, I believe it was, that showed, you know, kind of how to pick Revo apart, right? Damage found, you know, I talked to Joey about this, you know, he looked for where he could, you know, find Revo's weaknesses, and they were constantly playing 3-on-5, right? On the other hand, I felt like Diesel just got better throughout the event. Where they were putting bodies, playing confident, playing together. I thought that, you know, they did a really good job of kind of playing the way Damage did, which was, you know, keep their bodies alive, get that first kill. You know, I think me and you called 1 point. Did Diesel play Damage as well? I think it was Diesel and Damage, where their first point was like
a 5 or 6 minute
point where
gonna make the first just that game ended 2-1. It was on Saturday. It was the that game, that first game for Damage that they played on Saturday. And that was, Damage needed to win that one, because Damage came off of a Friday where they beat the brakes off Infamous 6-0. And kind of, we'll get to it, as we talk about some of these other squads. But I mean, Infamous had probably one of the worst performances they've had in years. I mean, they finished 0-4 with a -14. And that's, I did not see that coming. But with Damage and Diesel, so Infamous beats up on, Damage beats up on Infamous, and then they lose to Legion by 1. So they're sitting with a +5 1-1 record. Damage got knocked out of the first event. Damage did not play on Sunday at the first event. It's also been years since we haven't seen Tampa Bay on Sunday. But this is just the kind of adds to this argument of how difficult it is in the Pro League, and it's tough to call. But yeah, so with Diesel playing Revo, Revo finished 2-2 with a +3. They beat Blast Camp by 3. They lost to Aftermath. Then they lost to Heat, so they were sitting at 1-2, and they had a must-win situation. And then they beat Uprising by 2 to go, 15-4, 12 against, +3, 2-2, and skate into Sunday to play into this wild card round. But they're hungry for it, man. I mean, you look at Revo's roster, that roster is ridiculous. You look at Diesel's roster, that roster is ridiculous. Now they're going to have all this time to, with Mike Jeffrey for Revo and all his experience, guys on that squad, because there is a decent amount of experience on Revo's starting lineup. These guys have been playing in the league for years now. And then you take Diesel with one of the most high-powered rosters on planet Earth. I would have to do the math, and it's tough because, as far as who actually gets paid what, not their accountants, but they have this super high-paid roster. That's a barn burner for a wild card game right there between Revo and Diesel. So, again, we can spend an hour just picking these two teams apart and discussing what happened. But who you got in this one? Do you think Diesel's ready, or do you think that Revo's experienced lineup after losing Henry Sense and Stephen O'Mara to the Ironman, who were outstanding, they got the bye into the quarterfinals. They play the winner of that. So Revo could be playing the Ironman if they can take down Diesel. So again, there's just the stories abound in this Thursday matchup that we have here. It's going to be a really fun Thursday.
So I think it was Heat that kind of had Revo that kind of showed how to put it on Revo a little bit, because Revo really struggled in that Heat game, right? They kind of played 3-on-5 the entire time. So, if I was Diesel, I would go back and look at that Heat game to see the bodies that they shot and where they shot them from. But again, you give all these teams this much time to prepare, it's going to be a different story. But man, I'm probably going to have to go with Diesel in this one.
Okay, so let's head to the ML Kings and Blast Camp matchup.
I think I'm going to give.
What's up?
So I feel the same way about ML Kings and Blast Camp. I thought that the ML Kings got better throughout the event. I think that they were playing better as a team. I felt like Blast Camp, Soap was up there doing most of the work for them. They just really needed the guys on the outside to stay alive, right? So I think the big determining factor there for Blast Camp was, getting the other guys to kind of, take the pressure off of Soap, let him go up there and play, but then attack, when they had the opportunities and stay alive. But in this one, I kind of want to go with the Kings if they can kind of keep that momentum that they had going into Sunday. I actually thought that this was going to be a really good, fun match to watch because I thought that it probably would have been a grinder. And then, whoever won that, going at the Russians who just want to play a ton of points and, were very aggressive on this field. So I probably would have taken the ML Kings in this one just because I thought that their attack was coming from all over the field. And they had a lot of guys playing well. So I would have taken the ML Kings in that one.
I think La Papa was awesome in the snake for the most part, but Soap was the big standout. Soap was playing that middle for Blast Camp better than pretty much anyone in the entire league. I would put his play up against literally anyone in the league with how well he played up that middle of the field. It was impressive. I'm just wondering if with this much time, are the ML Kings going to find a way to shut Soap down up the middle? And then but just kind of, again, looking overall, so like Revo and Diesel, right? So Revo went at the first event 3-2 with the +1, and then heading into this one 2-2 +3. They're sitting at 5-4 +4. Diesel was abysmal at the first event. They know it. Everyone knows it. It was an 0-4. They were the only team that didn't win a game at the first event. But then to see them turn it around and have the event that they had, or at least the prelims that they had, 2-2, but a +2, able to squeak on, which is why they're playing in this wild card round. But it was definitely better. So they're sitting at overall, Diesel's still at a 2-6, -7, whereas Revo now has made 2 Sundays in a row, and they're sitting at 5-4 +4. So on paper, I think you got to go with Revo a little bit, but I don't hate your call on Diesel here at all. I in some universe could be this one. Diesel is going to win this game and finally find their form. That's kind of the question with that roster is, are they going to find their form? Revo seems a little bit more battle hardened and more focused into where they're at in their careers in this specific moment. in the sense that, they've had some good showings. They've lost people, still making some Sundays, and they've lost core members, whereas like Diesel switched their coach a decent amount of times, but they still have that same roster. Yeah, they lost J-Rap to Russians. That's a different, part of this conversation. And then with ML Kings, dude, the ML Kings were not good at the first event. 1-3, -12, and then show up now, go 2-2. So they're sitting at 3-5 with the -10 heading into this Sunday performance. Blast Camp, though, makes their first Sunday. And this is a cool story for Blast Camp because, so PB Fit, who beat up on Blast Camp essentially, well, they didn't beat up on them, but they beat them. They won all those, semi-pro tournaments, but now we have this brand new year, and Blast Camp's going to be the first team between PB Fit and Blast Camp to make a Sunday, because PB Fit went 1-3 at the first event, 2-2 at this last one, +2, like right on the edge. So, and Fit beat Dynasty. Fit's incredibly impressive, winning gunfights, not making a lot of mistakes, shooting bodies on the break, but it's Blast Camp that makes the Sunday first, so this is going to be a little bit of a chirping moment for Blast Camp that, they finally make it. And if they can beat them and go to play Legion, my thoughts though, on this side of the bracket, Todd, and again, we're going to break this down as we do some more shows, as we head forward to this event, but Legion is looking really good, dude. Like Legion was sitting at an undefeated. They were 4-0 with a +10. So whoever plays Legion, you better do your homework, and you need to play a flawless game, because like that starting five now is locked in. They've been looking really good. Legion, especially with Dynasty and Hurricane. So we'll see what happens with Legion, but they could take number one in the series title race after this event, depending on how they do, because Dynasty didn't make Sunday, Hurricanes didn't make Sunday. Legion went 3-1 at the first event, and then 4-0 in the prelims. They're sitting at an 8-2 with a +12 for the year. Like Legion looks really good. So this is my question: regardless of whether it's ML Kings or Blast Camp, do you think either one of those teams has the ability to beat Legion with how good they're looking in 2024 right now?
No, not at all. The thing about the Russians is that like they really want to play as many points as possible, right? And it's really just about that pressure. They put pressure on you on the field, right? They're willing to play fast points by taking ground, and if they make it, then they're in your face right away, and you got to deal with it. You see Kirill jumping all over the box, looking for where the seam is, and he's just going to try and take it right away. It's basically they're playing four heavy guns, right? With Kirill as the wild card, where he can go anywhere, right? It makes it kind of hard to scout. He just looks for a seam, looks for an opening, tries to take a spot right away. There was one game where he got shot on the break, a few times. I can't remember who it was, the last team that they played, but
we're talking about Kirill or Karslev?
They played Kirill.
Okay.
Kirill.
Okay.
Kirill.
Because they're sending
But
Karslev
the thing is,
too.
when you're worried about
Karslev's wilding out on that D side, dude. Like Karslev's going crazy. That's why it's hard right now for them. Because are they holding Karslev up? Are they sending Karslev? Are they holding Kirill up? Are they sending him? Are they holding Malloy up, or are they sending him? It's like you got to pick one of the three, and good luck. Like they're going to attack somewhere. They're either going all the way at the middle with Kirill Pridney, or they're going all the way up on the D side with Karslev, or they're going to send Malloy on the snake side. They're definitely doing one of those three. You just got to pick the right one and hope that you shoot that body.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point, right? Kirill's coming, so are the other guys going to go too? So, you're like trying to play to look where Kirill's going to be, because he's definitely coming somewhere, right? And then it's like, okay, well, now I got to keep an eyes out on, whether Malloy takes off or Karslev takes off. At the first match we watched them play, he ran out to the Dorito corner like 3 times in a row, twice tried to jump over the stream, right? Like, okay, you're like, all right, you see Kirill coming, he's coming, but then it's like, all right, well, Karslev keeps running to the corner. Maybe we double up guns over there, and then you take one off the center, and then next thing Kirill, they shoot your snake eye on the break, and then Kirill's standing there locking that zone off, right? But, it's just the fact that they want to play so many points where they're just going to continuously put the pressure on you. You don't know where it's going to come from. These guys are really good gunfighters, but, like, the more points you play, it's not just that you play a ton of points. It's how many breakouts do you have? How did you feel confident in it? Can you win? How many gunfights can you win against Malloy and the Snake? How many gunfights can you win against Kirill in the middle? And then after you deal with those guys, then J-Rab's the guy that's coming up behind them. So it's like there's just so many talented guys in their starting five that are so good at gunfighting, so good at communicating, and that are threats. I'm a big basketball guy, right? I love basketball. Watching the NBA playoffs right now, the teams that are winning, you have to watch out when 1 through 5 is a scoring threat, right? When it's just like, one or two guys are scoring threats, then you can game plan around those guys. But when you constantly looking around, every single guy can score. That's the way that the Russians are playing right now. It can come from anywhere at any time.
So let's stay on this side of the bracket for a little bit here. Let's just say whatever, Blast Camp, MO Kings, they get through that battle. They go play in the quarterfinals. They got to play Legion. Legion's the big favorite. It doesn't matter who it's going to be. It doesn't matter if it's Blast Camp or MO Kings. MO Kings and Blast Camp have had a rough year to start. Well, I'm sorry. They've had a rough year to start things out. Well, not so much for Blast Camp because it's their first year. So, I mean, as long as they don't get relegated, then Blast Camp had a successful season. That's not how they're going to look at it. They're going to want to win tournaments. I understand. But we've been doing this for a long time. And the nuts and bolts of the reality of the situation is if Blast Camp can make a few Sundays like they already have down. Blast Camp, again, made a Sunday at their second pro event ever. Dude, congratulations, boys. I'll tip my hat and respect to you. But welcome to the real show. This is where it really gets crazy. And now you got to play ML Kings with a group of dudes also hungry for it because they had an abysmal first event, down in the bottom 4. And they want to have a good showing here too. The tough thing for them is whoever wins this game has to fight Legion. On that side of the bracket, you guys play Damage. Damage, talk about a rough start to the year. They didn't make Sunday at the first event. But if you look at Damage, 13th at the first event, 1-3, -3. And then they show up in the prelims. They go 3-1 with a +12. Damage was on fire on this layout. Chad Bougere was going off on that D side. Keith Brown, Snake side, middle, Rainey, Brian Smith, they had and then the Edwards brothers, whatever. I mean, Marky Ireland had an awesome moment. They had some production from the bench. They had production from their starters, and obviously you guys had a great event too. I'll get to that in a second, hyping you guys up. But looking at Damage's performance, I mean, Damage was sitting. They beat Infamous again 6-0, lost to Legion by 1. And then beat Diesel by 1 in a very close game where both teams were kind of playing very conservative. And then they beat the brakes off Notorious 7-1. So it's just a much better look for Damage, more Damage-esque. They seem to like this layout, and now they have a bunch of time. That's a bunch of experienced guys to spend a lot of time looking at your guys' lineup. Before I kind of get into the nuts and bolts of how you guys did, again, staying on this side of the bracket, what's your thoughts matching up against Damage?
Yeah, it was actually Notorious was the team that Joey was telling me about the last game that we had called, I believe. He was just like, man, you can't shoot Archie Barnes, right? ABJ,
yeah,
he's making in there, right? So, they try to take out those inside guys. And, when you have a good team that has really talented players that are really good at shooting on the break, you can kind of adjust, have those conversations on, how to deal with teams from team to team. So, they're a good team, right? They have weapons everywhere. Chad Bougere and Keith Brown on the outsides, the Edwards brothers and Rainey. We saw, them shooting a lot of people on the break, being patient, being smart, talking really well. Brian Smith was in there a little bit in the middle, right? So, whenever you have guys from, 6-7 guys deep, that are very good at communicating, I feel like that was a big reason why they did so well because they're patient, right? They understood the tempo of the way that field played. They put pressure on different teams in different ways. So, when you have a team that's, well coached and, very experienced and talented, they're hard to beat. And, it showed by the way that they beat every team that they beat, right?
For sure. And with you guys, I mean, again, talk about a tale of two tournaments where, Shock shows up to the first event with this brand new squad, barely, any time together. And that's always historically very difficult. Anytime a quote unquote super team is put together. What do I mean by that? I mean, a team that has guys that have done very well on other teams, all-stars, high-paid dudes. So again, Todd Adamson's going big. He brings you in to coach. He picks up these high-profile players that are kind of cherry-picked to, recreate both the Ironman from 2020, but also a couple symbiotic relationships with some other players that have, that kind of want to play. It's a cool story. And, you guys go into the first event and go 1-3 with a -5, and don't make a Sunday, take 15th. And then you show up and Shock was really good. I mean, you guys on day 1, you guys beat Impact by 3 and the Hurricanes by 1. So those are two teams that, the Hurricanes were top 2 at the first event. That's a really difficult team to beat at this point. They had a rough tournament, which we'll get into at a later date, but that's a really amazing day 1. And then day 2, you guys show up and you beat the ML Kings by 3 in full control of that one, but then you lose to the Bears, and the Bears have kind of been a little bit of a spoiler here. So it was kind of a fascinating run in the prelims in the sense you beat a lot of top teams. And then in a bracket, the Bears were sitting at 3rd, but you guys were 4th, and then the ML Kings were 5th. So in that bracket, the only people to make it through, the Hurricanes didn't make it through. So the top 3 teams essentially did not make it through: Hurricanes, Impact, and Bears. The bottom 2 teams make it through to Sunday. Again, this is just how crazy it's getting. When you look at the 4 brackets that we had at the event in Texas, and you look at the bottom, from tier 4, Ironman, Aftershock, and Damage makes it through. And then ML Kings, Diesel, and Blastcat makes it through. Only Uprising and New York Extreme from the bottom 8. Those are the only 2 teams that didn't make it through. And Extreme's kind of at the very, they're on the precipice. That's the team that's worried about getting relegated right now. But it was such a turnaround so quickly for you guys that I was very impressed that you were able to show up and beat Impact and Hurricanes on day 1. I know that's what you guys expected, and I was at some of your guys' practices, but again, just what are your thoughts on that? And then, kind of want to talk about the battles, both middle, Dorito side and Snake side, for Aftershock versus Tampa Bay Damage in the quarterfinal matchup.
Well, as far as all those teams that were in that bottom 8, I really just feel like, the gap is closing every year, right, between the top teams and the bottom teams. I just feel like people are working harder. People are playing more. We're getting these young, hungry teams coming up, that are playing together, like Blast Camp and Fit, new to the league. A lot of, players or, teams that were in the league that just, historically didn't do well, disappeared. People sold some franchises and new franchises come in and, you got new ownerships and, new perspectives and, some of the good players from those older teams are now helping build other teams. So, I just feel like the teams, on the whole are getting better year after year, and that's just, good competition. So, I feel like that's, a big part of it. But, as far as Aftershock goes, that first event, I'm not going to make any excuses, right? We came together in a short period of time. We gave it what we had. We knew what mistakes we made. I could have done a better job on, how we played the field, right? But, to get a group of guys together and be able to communicate at the level you need to communicate to win these tournaments, it's difficult, right? But, I just think that, there's, teams like the Hurricanes that took second very well could have won that event, right? They played really well. They had a very good event. They've been in the league for a couple years now. They keep getting better. Dynasty's as consistent as any paintball team in history. X Factor bolstered their lineup. They got, 2 amazing Snake players and a group of 3 that, that really know each other, played together for a long time, with TJ Meter and Fuzzy, right? Impact, again, has had the same team, that they just did well at World Cup. We know what they're capable of every event. There's just the good teams continue to play at a high level, and the teams that are in the lower divisions, they're working hard and they want to be good, right? So, we take 15th, but also, at 1-3, we felt like we could have very easily been 3-1, and you know, finishing 15th is a product of having a whole bunch of teams that finished 1 and 3, right? Only Diesel was the 0 and 4 team. So there's a lot of 1 and 3 teams, point spread, and that's how you end up in 15th.
Yeah, like, I mean, there was
teams are good. 2, 4, there's a lot of.
We had 8 teams that went 1 and 3 at the first event. 8 teams. Let me just double count here. 8 teams. Yeah. That's insane. So like but that's the first event, right? And this is what I love about this game is that before we did know, okay, there was and it still is the case. I mean, we still have the same teams winning these tournaments over different years, but I mean, Damage went 10 years without winning an event. Impact 1, 2, been a little bit for them. Heat has been struggling to win an event, for a couple years now, even though they've been making every Sunday and so consistent. So if we could maybe just jump to that other side of the bracket, and then you keep having these legendary squads. So now Shock comes in, legendary squad, revamped, rebooted, and now you guys are looking as dialed as I think a team can look within that time frame. I mean, that's a really tough time frame. And Ironman are also kind of in that same situation. I mean, the Ironman had a huge turn of events. I mean, the Ironman went from taking 14th to going another team that 1 and 3 with a negative. They had a -4 at the first event. And then they show up and go undefeated with a +7. They're sitting at 5 and 3, +3 overall for the year. Get the bye into the quarterfinals. They're going to play the winner of Revo and Diesel. That's going to be a fun matchup because if it's Revo, then you have Henry Sense and Steven O'Mara playing against their former squad. And Revo did way better at the first event than the Ironman. But hey, we all know the road is long. You're not just jumping on a team to see how you're going to do at the next event. It's at least a year commitment for most, guys. But that's a fascinating story. And then with Diesel and how, amazing that roster is and how we've been expecting them to step up, that's a cool story too. But just, before we kind of talk about the Revo Diesel situation, how they would match up against the Ironman, what did you think about the Ironman in the prelims? Because I know, I thought it was pretty good, man. Like, that was very impressive. Again, same thing you guys are dealing with in a short amount of time.
So it's always about finding a good group, finding guys with, like mentalities, getting everybody to buy in. Obviously, how Shane Pestana is as a coach, right? He's a fiery guy. He's all about attacking. They got a whole new group of guys. We actually were in the pits next to their pits for every single one of the matches that we played. And, they're just pumped up. They're fired up. They're ready to go. Everybody seems to have bought in. And they just were attacking way more this event than they were in that first event, right? You saw them that first event and they looked a little timid, didn't want to get into the snake, didn't really want to attack. They were trying to win from the back line. And then I felt like this event, they were really pushing forward. I thought Geiger made a big difference for them, just getting into that snake, being in there and putting the pressure right away, making teams have to deal with him. And then Tom Guest, being big, getting good shots on the break and attacking the middle of the field. And then, with Henry and O'Mara, those guys are creative. They stay alive, really crafty, good at finishing, good at talking in low body situations. They just have, some really good pieces. And, sometimes it just comes down to the fit, right? You find a good group of guys, and if they all buy in, then, it's fun to see what teams can do.
Well, that's what's interesting. So that matchup, regardless of what happens in your guys' division here, we are on your guys' side of the bracket. To me, the most fascinating conversation with the Damage and Aftershock matchup in the quarterfinals. So we're gonna have wild card starting at 8, and then at 9 we're gonna have Heat, X Factor, Aftershock, and Damage. This is all Eastern time. With the Shock Damage matchup, you got Keith Brown and I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming you guys are gonna have a bunch of practices leading up to this event. I don't know who your main snake guy is gonna be, because at the last event it was Hosky, a dude you picked up 2 days before the event, and then he shows up and he kind of plays his ass off. You guys ran a couple other guys that way. Trent was balling out in the middle. That Trent Nita was another dude that we didn't know how much playing time he's going to get on the Ironman. When Trent Nita is getting picked up on the Ironman, for 2024 at a couple months ago, he's sitting at like ninth on the depth chart. And then now he's a starter. And why? Because that's how it works out here. We don't care what your name is, who you are, what you look like, what your weight. No one cares. No one cares. All we care about is if you're shooting people, dude. That's all that matters. And Nita was shooting people. Hosky was shooting people. He was getting into spots, crucial spots, staying alive on a snake-heavy field. And so when you look at Shock, like, yeah, you guys played outstanding. Why did you play outstanding? Well, you had a lot of contributions from a lot of guys. You know, I mean, obviously, Parrish played well. You know, I expect LJ Parrish to play well at this point in time. I expect Corey Hall to play well. And A-Rod. A-Rod was phenomenal out there. I expect those are all-star caliber dudes. We don't know how good Clay Hughes, Trent Nita, and Hosky can be. We don't. You know, like we have not seen them in the deep water on Sunday afternoon winning tournaments for their teams. It hasn't happened yet. You know, so but they are great talents. And that's what I love about this game is that every year it's next guy up, next man up, next person up. What are you going to do? And so it was so fun to watch Shock play because it was a big question mark on that snake side. So you guys head in and you got to match up one of those dudes against Keith Brown, you know, or whoever comes off the bench for Keith, but it's probably going to be Keith, you know? So like, that's a really cool story that's going to go down around 9:00 in the morning Eastern time on Thursday on June 20th. And of all the battles that I'm excited for that specific gunfighting battle. That's a gunfight side of the field. If you win a gunfight on that snake side, you just gave your team a huge boost. And if you lose a gunfight, well, you just kind of may possibly lost that point for your team in the snake. You know, there's a lot that can go on, but that's where the tempo and the pace of the chess match starts. So I just wanted to get your thoughts before we talk about this Heat X Factor match. Because you know, again, we're going to do a lot more of this discussion as we move forward before we get to this. But yeah, so it's your guys' like kind of rookie snake dudes versus this snake legend. But this is how you get paintball famous. What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be Keith Brown over there. You know, we know Keith Brown's coming, right? But, you know, shout out to Dylan Fout. The Aftershock movie is going to be ridiculous. You know, a lot of the questions that you have, that people have, you know, you're going to be witness, you know, when the movie comes out, right? We're going to have to get some good seats and some good snacks. But, I mean, we show up to practice on Wednesday, and we're going to practice the Russians out at Giant Party Sports in Dallas. And Hosky shows up. Todd's like, hey, we're going to bring Hosky in. I'm like, awesome, great. He goes out there. You know, we played the Russians, you know, 2 matches on Wednesday. He plays great. You know, he's gunfighting really well. He's attacking the way he wanted to attack. And I was like, you know, I'm going to put him in, right? I just made a decision to put him in. And he did really well. And you know how, like, you know, I always talk about it's harder to, like, teach somebody to go than it is to try and reel him in. You know, well, that was the case with Hosky, right? He wanted to go, right? And I constantly had to try to tell him, like, hey, man, like, you know, we gotta play a little pace here. We gotta pump the brakes. But, you know, it's always nice when you get a guy that wants to go, wants to fight, wants to shoot everybody, wants to prove himself, right? So, you know, I'm very happy getting him on the team. I thought he did a great job for us. And I think that this time in between, you know, the event and going into the next event is only going to help us be better as a team, to be able to have some conversations and talk about, you know, and look at the games together more and talk about how he can be better. And Trent, you know, Trent's a kid that a lot of people had written off. You know, a lot of people have, you know, a lot of negatives things to say about Trent, but, you know, there's a couple people that I really trust, you know, that believe in Trent, you know, and I had some really good conversations with him from the start. And, you know, when you have a kid that's that talented, that has had this much experience and he just turned 21, you know, I'm really excited about a kid like that because, you know, the interactions I've had with him, you know, my relationship that I'm building with him, you know, I love that kid. You know, he's awesome, cool kid. He's hilarious, extremely intelligent. And, you know, I think that he's only going to get better. And, you know, it sucks that, you know, things didn't work out, you know, in other places for him, but, you know, that only makes it better for me. So I'm happy that I got him now. Right. And we have him as part of our team because, you know, I think he's really talented and I think he's going to be able to learn from the veterans on our team. And, I feel like I'm getting a Jacob Edwards, when he was, 17, 18 years old. It's only going to be up from here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. He was relentless up in that middle. He also showed his versatility. Didn't play just one spot. I think to me that's one of the most fascinating matchups is Shock versus Damage. At again around 9:00 in the morning on Thursday the 20th when we try to figure this out. So last set of questions here, Todd, before I let you go. Houston Heat versus X Factor. This is a tough one, man. Like when it's like whatever, man. People are gonna be like, oh, I'll play whoever, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's 5 guys with guns. But when you kind of look at who would you rather have in your bracket, I mean, you're kind of lying if you don't think you're gonna want the softest bracket possible to get to the finals. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. However, the counter argument to that is that if you beat the best teams out there, it definitely sharpens you up. Now, unfortunately for Heat, is that Houston Heat is kind of on. They've made all these Sundays for years. I mean, I'd have to go back and look at my notes here to see when the last time it was before Heat missed a Sunday, but it's been a long time, and we just saw all these top teams miss a Sunday. But Heat's been incredibly consistent. Now, Heat had a very frustrating World Cup, and I know you're very familiar with Houston Heat. You coached them last year. You guys go into a World Cup situation where you guys get this like bye into the deep rounds, but then Houston Heat, after taking a sixth, a second, a fourth, a second, they go into Cup, and then they lose every single game. They lose to Damage by 3, to Dynasty by 2, to the Tauntauns by a bunch, and then they get obviously again the way that Cup worked right into the quarterfinals, and then they lose to Impact by 2. So Houston Heat didn't win one game in Sunday, but still took sixth, at World Cup, but still took a sixth, so they took third overall. But I talked to all those guys. I talked to you about that. This is before Ryan Smith came in, before you moved to Shock. But it was such a frustrating situation for them that it fired them up for this year. So then they come into another year where here we are again, where Heat goes undefeated in prelims 1 in Vegas, and then they lose in Sunday. But they were sitting still at a 4-1 with a plus 12 after their loss on Sunday. And then they go into the prelims at the first event or second event in Texas, and they go 4-0 again. So Houston Heat has the best record in the entire league, and they're sitting at an 8-1 with a plus 17. Now, that's not a surprise to anybody, but they got to play X Factor, and X Factor's roster is nasty. Like, that's a roster that I looked at that roster this year, and I was like, wow, okay. They kept everyone together. They lose Matt Jackson, but and they, so you get Mac Jackson and you get Axel. But when I look at, you get Axel. So they get Max Jackson, they get Axel, and I'm like, okay, that's a team with those components, with the fact they have Meter, and then they lose LJ, but like that D side's still pretty solid. I look at that roster across field with Colt Roberts, and that's a team that I feel could be winning some tournaments. And so when I look at Sunday and I look at that Heat X Factor battle, it's like, and TJ has been just almost flawless since he came back from his knee injury. I mean, TJ has been winning low body situations, shooting lots of bodies on the break, like just filling perfectly. Like TJ's kind of like that, almost like if you look in the paintball, like Akashic records of an iconic, like the stereotypical spot that plays the role he plays, that's TJ Danner. And so when I look at a lot of these guys, I'm like, man, this is a team I feel could be real strong this year and maybe win a tournament. And I feel like this might be a year where X Factor wins a tournament. But I feel like maybe the winner of again, Shock, you could say the same thing about Shock and Damage. The winner of the tournament could come out of the Heat X Factor, Shock Damage quarterfinal battles. What do you think about this? This is my last question before I let you go. You get Heat and X Factor. What do you think about that matchup? This is, again, just one of those ones where I'm like, I can't wait for this one to go down on Thursday.
Well, it's a tough one. I thought that, just going off of what happened at the event, I thought that Heat had the easiest bracket. right? But they played well. I thought that X Factor had a more difficult bracket and didn't start off well, but got better as the tournament went on and had to basically fight for their life, right, to get in, right? They had to win that last game to make it in, I believe. But
yeah, we'll just
I mean,
just real quick,
having a month
just real quick, just so we just set the stage. He beat everybody. Uprising by 1, Blast Camp by 2, Revo by 1, Aftermath by 1. Very, very close battles. But they went 4-0 with a +5. Whereas X Factor lost to the Ironman to start out the entire tournament. So they were like immediately in, oh, okay, we lost a game. And then they beat NYX by 2. And then they won their next 2, but they won them by 1. So X Factor, was sitting at a 3-1, but every single game but both of the games they won on Saturday were by 1 point. So like they went through some wars, and I think that it's like tuning them up for that, but again, we're not going in right in from Friday to Sunday. If you and I were having this conversation on Friday evening, right before Texas, or Saturday evening, right before Texas was about to go down, it's a different situation where we now have, again, a month and a half to prepare for this. And I feel like this is another one of those fights, though, where I'm like, all right, Heat X Factor, man, I have no idea. I mean, one of them sitting at 4-0 with the +5 Heat, 3-1 with the +3 X Factor. X Factor had to deal with more adversity. Heat typically goes through cruise control, but then they have problems on Sunday because he keeps losing these close fights on Sunday. And that could be in Atlantic City to see. I don't know. It's for, if you're a Heat fan, you hope that this is because if they beat X Factor and it's a close game and it's a battle, it goes to overtime or it's a 1-point game, then you're thinking, okay, man, he's dialed for this one. Like they could be winning this tournament. I don't know. This is kind of, again, our last conversation we're gonna have before we sign off, but that fight right there is fundamental to who could win this tournament, I think, because like either X Factor or Houston Heat could win this tournament with how good they've looked with those rosters that they have. What do you think?
Heat and X Factor know each other very well. They have been practicing each other for a really long time. They know a lot of each other's tendencies. They know a lot of how they want to play, what the strengths and weaknesses are of every player on the other side. But I really thought that those matches that X Factor played really helped them learn about themselves. And, we'll see if Heat goes and makes any adjustments because they did do so well in those prelim games. So I think it's going to be a good game as always, but I thought that X Factor did play better as the event went on. But, Heat's just so talented from top to bottom. We'll see how they show up on Thursday.
So that's going to do it here as the stage is getting set for Thursday's battles, which is essentially Sunday's battles based on what we saw in Texas, which we haven't had since one of the events we had in Texas in 2012 in Galveston. So it's going to be crazy. That event got finished up in Phoenix. That was a Houston Heat moment for them. That was kind of the first time the Houston Heat broke out, and we acknowledged their greatness because they earned it. So yeah, I mean, let me put it this way. This will be my last question, Todd. All right, so it's based on it's Revo, Diesel, Ironman, Heat, and X Factor on the other side of the bracket. Of course, you're going to think Shock's going to go through and be in that final match, taking down Damage, beating the winner of Legion, and whoever wins against ML Kings and Blast Camp. But out of Ironman, Revo, Diesel, Heat, and X Factor, out of all those teams, based on what you've seen and what you've heard, who do you think you face in the finals?
X Factor.
Yeah, I mean, that I really think if X Factor can keep this roster together, I don't see how they don't win a tournament in the next season or two. I really don't. I mean, that's a ridiculously filthy, lethal roster with a bunch of experienced dudes that are like hungry for it. I don't see how they're not contending. I just don't. So I don't disagree with you there. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to keep you guys updated as we move to the next event. Again, it's going to be Atlantic City Major going down June 20th through the 23rd. And everything's going down for Texas on Thursday. So again, just big twist of events here with the weather. Everything got postponed. Everything got played but the pros. So the pros all going to be going down starting 8 o'clock in the morning. But we'll be doing a decent amount more shows as we head to that in order to give you guys some updates. And really looking forward to this one. Todd, thank you so much. I'll see you guys next time.